This panel tonight, this afternoon, is going to be very short statements from each of the panelists. Then we're going to focus primarily on a little bit about who won, the implications of that, how'd they win, why did they win in terms of money, demographics, other issues, and what are the consequences of the win for governing right now with the President and Congress, but also how the Republicans are going to get along with each other in the House and the Senate, and then finally about policy. And there's some major policy issues that certainly will be focused upon after the Congress gets organized and the President works on his agenda to work with them.
In 2012, we had the presidential candidates all had super PACs supporting them. What we saw in this election is congressional candidates had super PACs supporting them. There were 92 super PACs supporting candidates in this election, which was double what we saw in previous elections, at least. So independent expenditures, outside money, are becoming a fact of life in this election, and as everything, it's filtering down to the congressional election.
Republicans won on Tuesday, and yet when you look at their feeling thermometer scores or their favorability, they're actually in a worse position than Democrats are. And so, I think that this opportunity that they have, this window of opportunity, is very small. I'm like Candy, I'm not optimistic, but at the same time, I think it's a very important moment in time right now where it either has to go well for them and they meet this burden of proof, or I think they will really have lost their opportunity. Voters don't seem to be especially patient in giving them much time to prove that they can do something with their victory.
The turnout picture is even kind of more grim than the normal constriction of the electorate between a presidential and a midterm. This midterm electorate was more constricted than 2010, and we saw turnout particularly low in Democratic and in blue states. And part of what drove that is, and this will, I think, hopefully lead into an answer to your question, is there's been real weakness in the Democratic base for a couple of years now. We saw it in the races we were working in where we could, I worked, for example, in Maine, and, Mike Michoud was just having a very hard time getting the same percentage of Democrats that Paula Page was getting among Republicans. We saw it in Massachusetts, where I was also working, where Martha Coakley was having a very hard time getting the same percentage of Democrats. I mean, if she had won the same percentage of registered Democrats that Baker won among Republicans, this is pre-election turnout notwithstanding, she would have won that election.
The kinds of positions that people took and the kinds of positions that might ordinarily favor Democratic candidates passed when the issue itself was on the ballot. These are the same ballots, by the way, that then also cast votes in a lot of cases for Republican candidates. So I think that voters generally were turned off by Barack Obama and the administration and his leadership in general, but not necessarily all of the policies that are associated with Democrats. That's not enough, though, to bring about Democratic victory, but it's also certainly not enough to say that the gender gap was absent in this election. So I would say, generally speaking, if we want more women in office, we still need more candidates, and until we have that, we're basically going to be in a tough bind. The one other point I would make is that 2/3 of the candidates who run generally for Congress who are women are Democrats, so any year that's bad for Democrats is going to disproportionately not favor female candidates. And as long as women's electoral fortunes are tied to the vagaries of any one political party, that also puts their overall numeric representation on more precarious footing than at might men's.